All right. Good afternoon. My name is Ben Chavez. I'm the Director of Athletics and Security for Gallup McKinley County Schools.
My name is Kay Dawn Montano, and I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Gallup McKinley County Schools.
My name is Joel Copley. I'm the Coordinator of Counseling, Nursing, and Media Services.
Tonight we are doing a presentation, basically a public forum on a requirement that was passed. Let me give you a little bit of the background. On October 5th, 2021, the New Mexico PED sent out a memorandum reminding all school districts that new laws were passed, specifically under House Bill 43, that dealt specifically with the Black Education Act. This act had new requirements all districts and schools were required to follow. The first requires all districts to hold mandatory training for students and staff. The second is to change or update their discipline policy to specifically define what is prohibited as far as racial bias or discrimination, as well as what consequences would occur. There is also a portion about schools addressing the new law that would allow students to self-administer or carry certain medications. Tonight we are going to be presenting to you what Gallup McKinley County Schools has done to make sure that we are in compliance with the new regulations set forth in HB 43, the Black Education Act. First and foremost, the new House bill requires that superintendents and charter leaders provide annual training for all school staff beginning the 21-22 school year. Such training should occur in the fall, but we will be offering training throughout, especially for new hires that Gallup McKinley County Schools may be having. As far as the training requirements, Gallup McKinley County Schools will require all staff members to complete training on cultural awareness. This will be provided by the Global Compliance Network. This is the website if anyone is interested on going on to see exactly what training will be provided for staff members. All GMCS students are provided anti-bullying training that is provided by local school counselors under the guidance of our counseling department. GMCS has in fact updated our discipline policy. We have specifically outlined what prohibited acts are and what possible disciplinary sanctions will occur if there are any violations. I'm going to go into a little bit of the detail on the GMCS specific discipline policy. District and school policies. HB 43 requires districts and schools to establish school behavior and discipline policies that meet requirements. These policies are due to the Public Education Department for review prior to November 30th of 2021. The Gallup McKinley County Schools has had a meeting. We had input from many people. We'll go over those in a few minutes to show how we met this. When establishing our student discipline policies, we did have collaboration, which involved parents, SNAPS members, which are law enforcement, health and local emergency agencies, law enforcement, and parents. They were all in the meetings along with personnel from EDC, which is our Special Education Services, the Hearing Authority's office, input from counselors and teachers. We also had involvement from student councils. The public hearing, which is tonight, is us showing our openness on what our changes are to make sure that GMCS is in compliance with HB 43. We were asked to establish rules of conduct on the areas for student and school activity. In the GMCS Discipline Handbook, page 6, we have defined that the disciplinary policy applies during the school day on the way to and from school, including but not limited to travel in school district vehicles, private transportation, district-sponsored activities such as ball games, schools, plays, assemblies, graduation, and at all district facilities and property. We are also asked to specifically define what acts or are prohibited during activities. So on page 19 of the GMCS Student Behavior Handbook, we have defined the GMCS anti-bullying policy. This policy is student to student, student to staff, or staff to student. Bullying is defined as any willful act done by a student, whether individually instigating or in coercion with others for the purpose of subjecting such individuals to hazing, harassment, humiliation, intimidation, physical abuse or threats of abuse, social ostracism, shame or disgrace, or menacing acts, and stalking which may be based on the student's race, color, sexual orientation, ethnicity, national origin, religion, or disability. Harassment is specifically defined as knowingly pursuing a pattern of conduct, threats, either verbal or written, that are intended to disturb, alarm, intimidate, or instill fear. Racial harassment is any physical or verbal conduct relating to an individual's race. We must enumerate possible disciplinary sanctions. These sanctions may include in-school suspension, school service, or expulsion, specifically defined on pages 19 and 20 of our discipline matrix. They fall under GMCS policy 12.5. For the first offense, any student found that has violated the anti-bullying policy in 12.5 because of any racial or discriminatory instances. First offense is parental notification, mandatory conference with a parent and principal designee. We also refer to the school counseling. We require mediation, especially if requested by the victim. On a second offense, again, we have parental notification and mandatory conference with principal and parent. We do require school counseling be continued. We refer to the SAT team for a FAB or a BIP, especially if there are special needs. For a third offense, there is parental notification and a mandatory conference with principal and parent. School counseling is continued. However, the student will be suspended up to 5 days and will be sent to the hearing authority for violation of these policies. However, in every GMCS discipline policy, we keep a special asterisk that is the designation, which states, if in the opinion of the principal, the severity of the violation is of such a serious nature, then the principal or designee does have the option of referring the student directly to the hearing authority for any offense. What are the GMCS procedures for student suspension and expulsion? Any student found guilty of violating GMCS anti-bullying 12.5 will be subject based either on a short-term suspension, which is 1 to 5 days, a long-term suspension, which is up to 10 days, an extended long-term suspension, which is 10 days to 90 days, or an expulsion, which can be up to or more than 365 days. GMCS does recognize that corporal punishment is not allowed. It is against the law, and it is prohibited by all GMCS policies. So, we need to define specific prohibition against racial aggression. So on page 19 of the GMCS policy, under student to student, student to staff, or staff to student, these are the consequences. Again, bullying is any willful act. We've already gone over the definition. We've specifically defined what harassment is and what racial harassment is. We also go to page 36 of the GMCS handbook, which specifically addresses cyberbullying, intimidation, or any hostile offense or conduct. Again, the definition of what GMCS considers harassment or bullying, in particular, harassment or racial harassment. Finally, GMCS does recognize on page 37 of the GMCS Discipline Handbook that no person shall be subject to reprisals for good faith reporting or participating in the investigation of potential violations of this policy. We have tried to make it as clear as possible that students, parents, staff, community members, anyone should be feel free to report any instances they feel where any violation of HB 43 has occurred.
Section 8 of House Bill 43. Students has guidance for training and supervision of students who may self-administer certain medications. It allows for public schools and school district discipline policies shall allow students to carry and self-administer asthma medication and emergency anaphylactic medication that has been legally prescribed to the student by a licensed mental health care provider. Healthcare provider. Now, in this, the guidelines, the healthcare provider has instructed the student in the correct and responsible use of the medication. The student has demonstrated to the healthcare provider and the school nurse or other school official the skill level necessary to use the medication and the device that is necessary to administer the medications as prescribed. The healthcare provider formulates a written treatment plan for managing asthma and anaphylaxis episodes of the student and for medication use by the student during school hours or school-sponsored activities, including transit to and from school or sponsored activities. The student's parent has completed and submitted to the school any written documentation required by the school or the school district, including the treatment plan required in paragraph 3 above of this subsection and other documents related to the liability. The parent of the student who is allowed to carry and self-administer asthma medication and emergency anaphylaxis medication may provide the school with backup medication that shall be kept in a location to which the student has immediate access in the event of an asthma or anaphylaxis emergency. Authorized school personnel who in good faith provide a person with backup medication as provided in this section shall not be held liable for civil damages as a result of providing the medication. School sites as with the parent, nurse, and health assistants will will provide training so that the students, direct supervision of the students who do the self-administration, making sure that there's proper training. So here we have what the specific training entails, the 6 rights assisting with the medication, where medication will be stored, field trips, and record keeping. So these are outlines for that. This will be handled at the school site. And then documentation for the training, the supervised administrations, and signatures by the trainees to support for the student and supporting staff.
And that concludes our presentation. Thank you for joining us. If you have additional questions, please go to blackeducation@gmcs.org, and you can send the questions through there. Thank you very much.